probably the latest that we've gone before we've gotten on a pod talking about the draft and all things happening since we kicked it off on Saturday. So um, I'd say maybe good for us due to our restraint, or sad for us that we don't have kind of the rolling pods like we used to. But nonetheless, the coverage has begun, and we are going to keep going until we get up to the pick that's on the clock, and maybe a bit beyond as we get into trades and maybe some things happen live. But we'll have folks coming in and out. Right now, we've got the Panthers and the Eagles on with me, the Vikings. And gentlemen, I don't know. This is one of my favorite podcasts of the year. What do you guys think?
Definitely one of the best pods.
Yeah, it's nice to talk about this all off season, be excited about it all off season, then finally have some results.
Yeah, and again, there's an added layer of it too. I think we get excited for it when it's the college to NFL, but then the NFL to fantasy, and then the application of that to our league and how unique it is. It's just another reason to get excited, another reason to kind of react and overreact to things that have happened so far. So we are starting this with, I think it's the Browns on the clock with a 209. So that would mean 41 picks so far, and we'll go through each of those, and we'll talk about some of the trades as they happen. We'll try not to duplicate that with the trade talk later, but a lot of stuff, especially with the first, say, 15 picks going on, that was not expected, and some really fun trade aids where teams took advantage of it. So, you guys, anything you want to sort of highlight, or any favorite things so far before we jump into just kind of a pick by pick view?
I don't have anything.
Groovy. All right, so it took them a little bit longer than we probably wanted it to, especially after the draft started. But maybe it was like the real life where the Bears needed to wait at least 3 minutes after the clock started to take Caleb because they were instructed to by the NFL. Nonetheless, an hour and 24 minutes after the draft kicked off, the Cardinals took Caleb Williams, like we all expected, and we kind of figured really the draft starts at 2. So, this I don't think was where we mocked it last week, but what did you guys think of Jaden going 2?
I loved it.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. It's. Are you saying that because you love it because you're in his division, or do you actually love the pick?
I loved the chaos that it created.
Gotcha. Now, it's one of those things where I think we all knew with how much Commanders gave up to get to that he was going QB essentially no matter what. And then it just came down to who actually is the final person on the ring around the rosy to hold the 101, and what are they going to do? Because there for the longest time with RJ holding the 101 and having Kyler, it really looked like it'd be Marv at 1, Caleb at 2 for him. And then, it goes to Mike, and Mike's like, oh, I'll have it for like 24 hours. And then 20 minutes later, it's gone. And then Chargers to the Broncos, Broncos to the Cards. I think that's how it all went.
10 hours. It was at least 10 hours, not 20 minutes. I have some semblance of self-control, maybe. All right, I tried. But again, it's the same level of self-control that we expect the Giants to have as soon as two quarterbacks go on at 102, 101 and 102. This is what he was having wet dreams about for the entire process. And takes him 3 minutes and 30 seconds, respectively, to take Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors after those picks are made. So we wait an hour and a half for the first pick to go, and then within 4 minutes, we have our first 4 off the board. So I don't think any major surprises with who's going, but now Giants with Lamb, Harrison, and Neighbors. This is going to be interesting in the East.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's I'm not scared of that team. I don't know if it's something that happened with not having Allen, or maybe something that got lost in the Purdy moves or something. That defense looks really flat, and as nice and as beautiful as these rookie receivers are and everything is, I think everyone agrees CeeDee Lamb had a peak year last year, and that's unlikely to replicate. And then, Marv goes into a situation where he should be able to produce quickly and early, but, Neighbors has a watermelon for a quarterback, so we'll see.
Well, again, it's going to be interesting to see the flexibility. I think folks have seen, I'll call it my strategy, change a few times during this offseason, really trying to maintain flexibility of what direction am I seeing value and what position makes sense for me to play based off of where that value is. Clearly, Giants have been trying to sell Lamb for the last 3 months. Or ever since he kind of got him, just at kind of a premium he thinks that he should be. People aren't going to pay that. So now it's a question of, do I keep trying to get that and play the league until somebody says yes, or shift my strategy ever so and say, okay, you're not going to give me that for Lamb, maybe you will for Harrison. Probably not, but it's nice to dream sometimes, right?
Yeah, he's definitely been asking everybody for the first, second, and third born when it comes to Lamb.
Excellent. Good things happening and other stuff. All right, moving right on to the 105. Pat's ended up here after a series of trades and takes Rome Odunze. So we see 2 quarterbacks go in the first 2 picks. We see 2 receivers go the next 2 picks. And then this is kind of the next inflection point, I feel like, of a lot of drafts, and seeing the receiver go first. So maybe I'm just being silly, but what percentage of this was based off of the Discord pissing contest of I've never taken a quarterback in the first round have to be Rome versus Rome being the right pick?
I was really surprised that Pats thought there was an opportunity for him to get Daniels at 5. Because I really felt Daniels was gone by 5, period. So for the hang up to be there in the first place, because it sounded like he actually was planning on going QB and it was Daniels. But.
Well, I mean, and there was a world where if Commander says to heck with it, I'm taking Harrison, I think his value is going to maintain better. Giants seemed pretty locked into going receiver. So in that world, he gets Daniels at 5.
I think Giants would have gone receiver QB. I think he would have taken Daniels over JJ and May, and then at 7 he would have recouped and probably taken Bowers.
It would have been interesting to see him have to make the decision, I guess. What do you think, RJ?
I mean, so for Patriots pick, I think it was the right pick for what was available. But yeah, I assumed it was going to be Jaden at 2. At no point did I really think that Jaden was falling further than 2 or 3.
All right, fair enough. Maybe I just fell for the smoke screen, but wouldn't be the first time.
We did mock. Well, I mean, our most recent mock did have Marvin going second, but I mean that was basically done to see how it would shake out because we kind of assumed that Jaden was going to, or at least that was my thought process.
Yeah, yeah. It's one thing to do something like that. Like I believe right after we got done in the post pod, we all joked about that being messed up early by having Marv go over QB at 2.
Yep.
So I think we all felt like it was pretty likely he was going to be gone.
Yep. Well, Seahawks sitting there at 106, and this is the first pick in the draft that went wire to wire. It was assigned to the Seahawks based off how he finished, and he actually made the pick. So a couple of others have made it through and did that, but not a lot of those picks in this draft. He takes Drake May, third quarterback off the board, but if New England uses him how that he could be used, and he's as good as everyone thought he is based off of the draft process and the trades that were being offered, that's a heck of a thing to grab at 106. Yeah. I mean, the guy got traded like 5 seconds later, but still.
Yeah. He's a young guy. He's good. His only real problem is footwork. He's got to work on his feet. But they'll get him. They'll get him with a good QB coach, and he'll spend plenty of time before he even sees game field. And plus, they do have Jacoby, so they don't have to force them in. And hopefully they don't.
RJ is a Pats fan. How do you feel?
Not a big fan. Okay, so I like the pick for Seahawks because it was probably the best value on the board. Not a fan of Drake May as a Pats fan, but that opinion can change if he plays well, of course. But I just, when I looked at him, I thought he was kind of physically a project, but mentally ready for the NFL.
Yeah, and again, it's I don't know. I think some of this is after the last couple of years and I'll call it the post-COVID drafts where the prospects lost a year because of the COVID season. I think there was a little bit of us not wanting to trust our eyes on some of this stuff. So Drake May has been kind of a consistent wire-to-wire, top prospect in this class. So part of me wants to say, hey, he's done this the entire time, and he's been everything we hoped he would be. So feel good about it. But at the same time, it's last time we were this excited about 5 quarterbacks was 3 years ago, and that's not exactly turning out well for anybody. So part of me is hopeful, but part of me, is trying to sprinkle in the realism.
Yep, I definitely think some of that recency bias definitely does play into some hesitation. I mean, how many of the quarterbacks from 2018 that had a bunch of quarterbacks in the first round, and how many of them are starters in the league? Actually, a good portion of them all.
Yeah, 3. Yeah, it's just Rosen and Darnold that aren't.
Darnold's starting in Minnesota right now.
Supposedly, okay.
Hey, he is the starter until J.J. McCarthy comes and takes it. Clearly, I can say that impartially for no other reason. But yeah, that I believe is the fact right now. But speaking of J.J. McCarthy, he comes off at 107 to the Giants. So he makes his 3 picks in the top 7 of J.J. McCarthy, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr. As he continues his youth movement. Now, whether that will allow him to remain on top of the East, time will tell. But he's got those 3 big pieces. So let's see how he continues to break down and shift and pivot to make this team, I guess, continue in his youth movement. Yeah. All right. Good talk.
No, I agree. I'm definitely interested to see how the team's going to look in a few years.
Yep. So this next pick is a great one because in the context of the chat, in the context of the 8th pick being a huge surprise in the real-life NFL, the thought was, hey, the 8th pick here, go a number of different directions, especially with how the real-life NFL draft played out. And Bears probably shocked a good number of us by going Bo Nix at 8. I think a lot of folks had him going a little bit later, but considering going 12 in the real NFL draft to the Broncos in a situation where he's probably going to start immediately, can't fault it.
I love this pick. I love the trade that was associated with this pick. everything about it. Home run.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to a lot of these guys, and another part of it too, like what Mike was saying, there's 5 guys hamper your expectations and everything. When it comes to Bo, when it comes to JJ, when it comes to Drake, when it comes to all of them, really, it's just, are we getting super elite quarterbacks? No, but are we getting league average or better quarterback play?
Yeah.
Probably. Like, I do genuinely think that some of these guys like Penix and Bo, and that just had all this extra time, all these extra starts, have the ability to be league average or maybe slightly better right out the gate. Whether or not they can build on that and expand, the teams around them can just not suck so they don't get crippled, will be the really telling tell.
100% agree about Jaden because he's done it for so long. A little bit less so with Bo, but on a similar level. He started, 3 years?
He started 2 at Auburn and no, yeah, 2. Yeah.
Oregon.
See, my bad. I'm thinking about Jaden's 2 different stints at different teams, and I'm forgetting about that with Bo. So yeah, they're on the same level. They've started so many games; they know what to do, like how to play the position well enough.
Yeah, and Penix played at Illinois and then transferred to Washington. So all 3 of those guys are, I think, right around the 54 to 60 start mark, to where it's just ridiculous numbers.
Penix is more of a concern on just when he'll get opportunities.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, this was the 8th and the 9th pick being with the Colts, and the Colts trading that 8th pick to the Bears so he could take Nix. We'll get into what was part of that trade a little bit later, but Colts sticking with 109 and grabbing Brian Thomas Jr. Again, I think everyone was still pretty solid on the top 3 being the top 3 post-draft. And then there's some debate here definitely of who's wide receiver 4. And I know plenty of people were saying it's going to be Brian Thomas, and hell, he might be better than the Neighbors is out of this. So, at 9, that's not a bad thing to be able to grab.
No, good player. I don't think it was, at least in my opinion, it wasn't the best possible landing spot, but it was still a good enough landing spot where he maintained being the wide receiver 4 for me.
Yeah. The big thing with both Neighbors and Brian Thomas, where they weren't asked to run expanded routes at LSU. It was, we have these 2 guys that are ridiculous athletes and so good, and they have a tight end who will probably go top 2 rounds next year. And we have a quarterback that can sling it, so let's keep it simple and just run by everybody. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys do in expanded roles, being asked to do more.
Yep. So then 110, again, Pats was sitting here with 105 and 110 with the thought that he was going to move it at some point in the draft. Does here as Seahawks moves Drake May to the Pats in a deal here, but ends up back on the clock and taking Brock Bowers. So picks up a later first to be able to use as needed, and kind of stays within the tier and just takes probably someone he was debating between at 6, at 10. So makes a lot of sense for everybody, I think. And now Seahawks has got really the 2 call it athletic marvels of the last couple of years of Pitts and Bowers. And God help us all if he ends up with a tight end dynasty.
So far, he doesn't even have one good option. So let's hope Bowers improves that room.
Yeah, it's I feel like Bowers has the range of, show me at this point to if you have him below tight end 2 in your rankings, you're a fool. So we'll see. That's a hell of a value range.
Yeah, but I like Bowers at 10 better than Pitts at 4 whenever he was drafted by old Colts.
That's true.
So no, I'm kind of upset that he went Bowers. Honestly, he surprised me. I was very much thinking that he was just gonna take the remaining quarterback whenever he traded Drake, but that's not what he did, and that threw a lot of things off, I think, for a lot of people.
Well,
Definitely,
and
I
then,
mean,
like I said, speaking of stacks, you had 11, 12, and 13. You moved 13, but I think the 3 players I expected to go here do go here. Bill, do you want to take us through your process?
yeah, whenever 10 got there and I was without a quarterback, my initial plan was to go with Bo Nix. But when he went Bowers, my whole thing got thrown because I was going to do Bowers, Brooks, Worthy. And I just pivoted. I'm trying to find value, and Brooks is obviously the value. Penix is going to have his value. We don't really know what's happening with Kirk, but even if he sits a year or 2 years, he's still going to be a fine solution. I mean, he's going to be old, I suppose, but I'll take it at this point. But worst case is I have a trade value asset that's better next year than whatever else would have been here.
Yep.
And then I traded 13. So I don't know if you want to go into that or not, but
I will do the trade later there, but then Chargers taking Xavier Worthy, who, look, I made my feelings on him known in the last podcast. I won't say much more, but I think once again, Chargers just took a very simple strategy here. There's a first-round receiver tied to Patrick Mahomes. I think I'm going to take that player. Leave it at
it's
that.
interesting because he had Rashee Rice, and now he's got Worthy. So one way or another, he ended up tied to Mahomes.
But again, consecutive years. Let me
Yeah.
just take the
Yeah.
early draft capital receiver tied to Patrick Mahomes and let the process take care of itself.
Mhm.
Yeah, the big thing though is they play 2 completely different roles. Like the role for Worthy in that read system versus what Rice did, very different. It's going to be really exciting to see Worthy on the field there too, because he's finally one of these guys where it's like it's not just all speed. Like we're talking a guy with 3 years production in the SEC against good corners.
Oh, and again, don't get me wrong here. I'm coming at this with the laziest of analysis of this take. I mean, there is no lazier analysis than, wow, they were drafted by the same team in NFL life and now fantasy life. Like Chris Collinsworth is taking note of this, basically. Like that's what we're talking about here. I appreciate you coming in with some better stats and some more numbers to keep this on the toes and actually have some analytical value in this. But again, right in front of your pick at 115, Jags going Keon Coleman at 114. This is again that next tier in the draft with I'll call it blended values, but I think it's a fair pick by Jags, but I love this pick for you, James. You needed a running back. You got to 115. Trey Benson staring you right in the face. I love it.
Yeah, no, I was really surprised by Jags. I figured a receiver was going to go before me, but that was not the one I had in this range. But yeah.
Yep. And then Falcons from the pre-draft list. I don't know how long the list was, if it was just one and done, but taking Ladd McConkey. Look, that offense is studly. I think we're watching the board at this point saying who's going to be the first one to take a defender. So thought Falcons might go the defensive route, just like the real-life Falcons we thought would. But they shocked us, took something that reinforced a position of strength for them, and we'll see what happens as they continue to look to compete in a very, very difficult NFC South.
Yeah, I like Ladd. I like him more than Coleman. I'll say that much. But yeah, I also wonder how long that pre-draft list was.
I didn't see him put it until we were at like pick 13. So I'm assuming it could have been just as short as 3 picks. So who knows? Yeah, as a division rival, I was kind of hoping he'd reach and go for need. over taking BPA. But he sat and he took best player, which is going to be good for him down the stretch.
Yeah, and frankly, we've got a long time until the season starts. If things change, he moves Godwin, he moves something else, he can fill the gap in probably better, more efficient ways.
Yeah.
Speaking of efficient, we had only 2 teams drafted in these next 4 picks. 3 of the 4 being Commanders, and then Chargers popping in there with 119. Commanders taking Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, and Jalen Polk. Chargers taking Adonai Mitchell. So this now gives the Commanders Jane Daniels and these 3 receivers that he's building off of as he looks to put his team back together here. I think he's pretty much committed here that, you know what is Commanders doing? Sorry, I was trying to do this eloquently, but I can't. Like,
He
he's sticking to what he said he was going to do.
yeah,
He said he
built
was
his
going to draft all offense, and that's what he's doing.
Mhm.
but again, I expected him at any point just to kind of be on the clock and use the clock for trading to break these things down and fill out parts of his team.
Well, we know he
got
was
Daniels and these 3 receivers, but then he's got 3 of the top 5 DNs on his defense.
Yeah.
At what point do we start to see some effort at a pivot, or is it just going to be hey, I'm going to have a hell of a pass rush and a lot of youth on offense?
Well, I think he did an interesting thing. He bought his defense with picks next year, and he's using all his picks this year on offense. It's an interesting strategy considering that he doesn't have a running back, and they're all gone at this point. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't hate it, but I also I don't know if this run right here, this 3 out of 4, is proof that you should or shouldn't have a grouping like this, because these names aren't exactly special that he chose, in my opinion. So it's just is it worth it? I feel like maybe it would be more worth it to trade the picks for vets.
Well, 115 was the ledge, and then everything else was a lower tier.
And hey, if you have a couple guys in that tier that you really like and you want to build around, or hey, I'm going to grab a couple of shares of this because I think that there's going to be a good sell opportunity coming up, I can see doing that. And frankly, these guys were taken in a very similar spot of the draft that we usually see a pretty good hit rate in terms of year 1 opportunity and year 1 points. So
the first 2 by Commanders make complete sense because they both have first-round capital.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the other 2. They're both drafted in the second round, right? Yeah.
Jalen?
Yeah, Polk was, I think, the 34th pick, and Mitchell was around the 45th, I think.
Well, Mitchell went to Chargers. Mitchell was 220 and Polk was 25.
Yeah, I have no issue with either of those picks if those players are who they prefer.
Well, I think to me, part of this comes down to where did you have some of these guys pre-draft, and did they fall far enough in the draft for you not to like them, or did they go higher than you expected, and does that make you like them more? Because I feel like Adonai Mitchell, for a lot of people on a lot of people's boards, was right there in the wide receiver 5 area, and he's getting Adonai as the wide receiver 8 or 9, or maybe even our 10th receiver, simply because he fell a little bit. He's got diabetes. Maybe I don't know. We don't know all the actual inner workings of this, that, and the other. Maybe some teams don't want to have to monitor that. They don't want to have to be worried whether or not their guy is going to be able to go one play because he actually needs to come out and eat a snack and drink apple juice. We don't know.
I think Mitchell is just one of those names that his landing spot just basically ensures he's never going to be a wide receiver 1.
He's an interesting piece in a league like ours because he's not necessarily exactly to your point, Bill, a wide receiver one caliber type player. However, there is a range of outcomes where he's a Tank Dell type player that people kind of look at that end of the wide receiver one, early wide receiver two range right now from a dynasty perspective of trying to target. Like that kind of guy is in the Mitchell range of outcomes, especially probably in the role if they're going to be playing him in there. So I see that. And again, there were definitely things to like about the other three receivers too. Again, just not the direction I would have gone, but I understand the reasons why. But then we get our first defender. Is this because of me? Is this because I say in chat that Latu is my defender crush now? So now he goes 121 as the first defender off the board. Is this my fault?
I mean, I'm glad to see somebody likes him.
This is what I mocked in our mock draft too. I guess I think the thing is with the Lions, with as good as that team's getting, but it still has holes. Sometimes you just need to hit a double. This isn't a home run pick, but he should be good as long as he doesn't die.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing we have to say there. Yeah, I agree. It's a position of need. It's a good, singles and doubles type hit. Chargers, as he should, taking a home run swing here with Jermaine Burton. Could turn out really great in Cincinnati, or could go with a dodo bird. But sometimes you just get in there with a big bat and hope you connect.
Yeah, I like Burton. He'll be the 3 this year and maybe the 2, depending on what happens with Higgins. But yeah, that's a great spot for him to land, and he lasted probably longer than he should have.
Ooh. I don't like this pick at all.
Well, that's the thing where we're running into.
Yeah,
that's where we're running into. Like at this point, like I think a lot of us have a lot of different tiers on these receivers.
And it's dealer's choice. This whole draft, Mike's been saying it all offseason. It's dealer's choice. There's something for everybody.
I was basically repeating RJ. RJ, what were you going to say?
I think Burton's we already know what to expect with Burton. Just the players ahead of him on the depth chart. So I'm not a big fan of that. I don't mind Burton the player. It's just post draft I had him very low as a wide receiver. So I'm a little shocked that everybody had him as as a first round. And then Latu, if Lions is happy with that, I don't think there's any issue with any of the 3 defensive ends. Like the top 3, they're all in the same tier, but he is the lowest one out of the 3 for me.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've noticed, and this is obvious, so this is not some kind of brain insight, but for everywhere it's like Knicks won at 8. I didn't expect that. By the time we get to like the 13th pick, it's like I would have expected them off the board at that point. So kind of we're back to law of averages. So I expected Burton to be a first rounder. I think this was probably a little bit higher than I expected him to be, but I expected him to be off the board before the board turned to a 2. So I guess I get that. And again, that's part of the chaos here of that's more valuable to somebody than, one of the top defenders, and completely fair, especially depending on where your team is. But because of that nice little run of defense and stuff here, Dallas Turner to the Broncos, Edgerrin Cooper to the Panthers, Roman Wilson going to the Seahawks, but then Junior Colson going to the Seahawks also. So 3 very good defensive talents. And God, I love Dallas Turner. And I think that's going to be a very, very nice value for you, Bill, there at 123.
It was a very hard pick. Dallas still be in there, Hurst still be in there, and like on offense, I was really debating on Roman Wilson. But yeah, I don't know. I needed a defensive end more than I needed anything else, so I went with need, and it also maybe turned into BPA at the same time.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
I think Turner had the highest ceiling out of everybody left. So I like it.
I think he's just got the easiest path. I think Latu has some challenges in Indy. I really like the talent and think he may be the most talented. But in terms of talent and the role you play and the role you're stepping into, like they want him to go right into the Daniel Hunter role. And if you look at what Daniel Hunter scored here last year, it's over 300 points. So I'm not saying, oh, he's 300 points off the board, but 180, 200 at this point, like, okay, so, and sign me up for that year one.
Yeah. So that's why I say he has the highest upside. I do dream and envision him being in that role, but I do think the upfront money to Van Ginkel is going to give him the first crack at being that guy, and then we'll go from there.
I think Van Ginkel is going to move towards that more Wanham role. I think Minnesota likes to have the rotation. We can talk a little bit more as we get closer to it, but yeah, that's fair. I think it's not okay. He's going to step right in day one and get 70% of the pass rush snaps. He's going to have to earn his keep, but I think by end of the season, that's the role he's in, and the Van Ginkel view is kind of that rotational rusher, 40% of snaps piece for Van Ginkel. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a hater because I traded him last year.
No, I agree. Outside linebackers of Grenard and Turner seem a lot more intimidating than Van Ginkel and Grenard.
Agreed. Agreed there.
Just for versatility's sake.
All right. So, just for reference, the first running back off the board was Bill taking Jonathan Brooks at 111. We've now hit a nice little run at 127. Cardinals grabbing Jalen Wright. Again, I made my feelings about him known on the pod last week. I think that's a fantastic value and a fantastic pick. Pat's moving in. Moving up a couple of spots using an early third round pick to take Marshawn Lloyd. And I was inspired based off of those to make a similar trade with Panthers to come up to 129 and take Blake Corum. So just like that, we go from having 2 running backs off the board to having 5 running backs off the board.
Yeah, this was a fun little run. The order of the names was interesting. Like I would have probably just literally swapped them, like Corum first, and Wright last. But I don't hate any of these. Yeah, like I think that's great.
So we had a conversation about this last week, like off the pod. Like my opinions of Wright was like I don't necessarily like him for this year. I have him drastically lower than RB3. But I don't hate the pick of like Cardinals taking that because I do think he's the guy that 2 years out has the best opportunity to be not an every down back, but a first and second down back.
Well, and
You think
to your point there,
than Lloyd in Green Bay?
well, I would say to double click on RJ's point there, the right profile is one that he might have 1 or 2 or 3 games this year that he pops. But if your plan is like his, where he still has a ton of 25 capital, that I want to get the assets, but I don't need to score a ton of points. I don't think he's going to be in contention for like a top 4 pick. He's going to have too many points for that. But is he going to be kind of in the 5 to 6 range when he wants to say, okay, I want the guy who's in line to replace Raheem Mostert, even though he might not be the preference, over the guy who's going to compete with Kyron because this is going to keep my score down, but I like both profiles of where I think they're going to be a year in.
That's fair.
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted right. And the other thing, when it comes to draft capital, the thing to remember is Miami traded a future third to move up into the 4th to take right.
Yep.
So they're technically all 3 third-round picks when it comes to invested capital.
And again, I liked Marshawn Lloyd a ton as a prospect coming into the draft. I love the landing spot. I think it's the same kind of thing. It's going to take him maybe a year to get to where he needs to get to there with Jacobs and Dillon blocking him, but I think he's going to be a kind of a Tajay Spears type. That you take him last year knowing that he's going to evolve into the role and be part of it going forward. So you're taking him kind of a year early. So big fan of that one too.
Running backs are the new wide receivers that take 2 to 3 years to develop.
Man, A.J. Dillon's just another guy. He's already replaced. That's going to be Lloyd's RB2 role.
Yeah.
Really early.
When it came, like when I was looking at it and just assessing it, like so if they all become like the 2 and like a 1-2 punch, like this year, like for like a running back by committee, let's say, who has the best chance of taking over as like the 1? And like I think Wright has a slightly better chance than Corum.
Like out of these 3?
Yeah.
Marshawn Lloyd.
It's easily
You
Corum.
think he has a better chance of like outperforming Jacobs and Dillon if he's given the opportunity?
Well, Dillon, absolutely. Jacobs gets hurt all the time. Jacobs will lose his job to Marshawn Lloyd by injury.
I say Corum because Sean McVay is notorious for wanting a guy that can be in for all 3 downs, and he doesn't sub out guys a lot. And Kyron's been hurt. So to me, it's Corum's the clear RB2. Zach Evans is nothing. So I think that's just the clearest RB1 path. I think the best long-term path is easily right. Just that offense and the amount that they feed those guys.
That's fair. I like that assessment.
I do think that Kyron is the biggest loser, though. Like out of the pairings, I think he's the biggest loser out of the group.
Oh no, we're all losers for believing in Kyron because at the beginning of last season we knew
Jags. That's just Jags.
No, not Jags, not just Jags, because we all fell in love with Kyron at some point last year, like when he was doing things. Yeah. We just all forgot that at the beginning of last year he was only supposed to really be the passing downs guy.
Yeah, he was. What was he, a 6th rounder?
I don't know. Yeah, draft capitals. That's irrelevant.
The other thing that Sean McVay likes to do a lot is not have his running back be a tell. So Kyron's still going to be in on passing downs. Corum's going to still be in on running downs. He's going to use them interchangeably, I think. So I don't expect this to be like, Corum's going to take this over and be the lead back. No, I think it's going to be a split backfield. And last time I checked, it's kind of a good thing to be an active part of a Sean McVay offense. Just I think that's something we want to add when we're building fantasy teams. Just my 2 cents on that.
Didn't he make a running back an MVP at one point?
Yeah, almost. The big thing there is I agree with you, Mike. He does a lot like I think it's going to end up a lot like Sean Payton. I think it's going to be the Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara. He doesn't care if it's 3rd and 7. He'll have Mark Ingram in there take a screen. He'll have Kamara take the screen. Like they don't care. No matter what look you see, what backs in the backfield, they'll still throw it. They'll still run it.
Exactly. So then 130 comes on the board, and Ravens, notorious for tight ends, grabs Ben Sinnott. who, Washington went out and got Zach Ertz, but I guess once again, Ertz is going to be the starter, and they've got who they want to be the heir apparent in Sanat. Big riser in the process, but people love this guy.
I like him too, just way early. Feels early for any other tight end.
He's just the best tight end in the class outside of, the one and only Bowers that can do both run in, like actually run block, pass block, and catch the ball, break tackles.
So the other thing I was thinking about this, when we were in this zone, in past years, we've had discussions of which would you value more, the 201 or the 131? Because the 131 gives you the fifth-year option and forces you into the fifth-year option, whereas the 201 gives you an option to start putting a rookie on a second contract earlier and getting him more cost-controlled by that. So I think we've gone back and forth on that. Something that kind of made itself apparent to me, and I guess you guys probably already figured this out, that fourth year of cost control on a first-round pick versus if things go right for an early second can't be too discounted. So I feel like that's kind of shifted things back in that late first favor.
When it's a whole lot of day one starting defensive players,
Yeah,
it changes.
yeah. It's very much class dependent.
Yeah, when you're not picking like a quarterback that's going to start in 2 years, or a wide receiver that'll eventually get an opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, if you're drafting someone like Jalen Carter last year at 201, I really thought he needed to be a first rounder, because if the Giants would have traded up just one pick with having a quarterback like Josh Allen get paid $40 million, having 4 years of that caliber of D tackle, or what is it, the back end of the first, like $1.8 million before you ever have to actually pay him anything real.
Well,
over 2 years and then pay.
I was just going to say, Carter and Murphy are going to be perfect case comparisons.
Yeah.
Look, this is a plea to the Chargers as we continue to go through this process. Keep building with the way you're doing this. I don't want to see these guys traded. I want you to build around the pieces you built, take into this draft, because this is fun to see you put this together, especially the next couple of picks, in terms of foundational pieces. And just when someone has a ton of picks, you always wonder how they're going to put their team together. And I really like what Chargers is doing here, because Byron Murphy, again, I would say maybe a little high for the first D tackle to go, but for the role he's going to play and the defense he's going to play, I think that's going to be what his value is in 2 or 3 years anyway. So I can't fault him for the pick there. Peyton Wilson, and I think most talented linebacker in the class for me. Injury concerns caused him to fall in the real draft, but God, is there a better landing spot than Pittsburgh? And then at 201, Panthers getting Jared Verse, who, man, first pick that the Rams have made in the first round since Jared Goff, and and they have a need on that line, so immediately day one production there. And then Chargers once again going for the high talent profile that has a year or so because he's going to be a little bit blocked in Chop Robinson. So really fun run from an IDP perspective. And again, you have 2 in the first round and 2 in the second. And it'll be interesting because I feel like you've got kind of a 2x2 of, going to perform immediately and first round value, and going to perform immediately and second round value. I don't know. I'm getting nerdy with this.
No, I understand. I think that the Peyton Wilson pick in the first should never have happened. I think that, going back to the argument or discussion we were having about, having the fifth-year option or not, I think he's a perfect example of that fifth-year option not being necessary. He's going to have a rough first 2 years, I think. He should be able to be extended very cheaply after his second year. now he has to wait all 5. If he even makes it to 5. Like, that's the thing. I love the guy, but that was a stretch. Like,
Well, maybe his plan is to cut him after year 2 and then win him back for a cheap price in auction.
I don't think he gets away from waivers. But yeah, like, no, out of that run there, the only stretch I felt was Wilson. And Giants said it earlier in chat. This is why 201 has a ton of value, because somebody is going to fall that shouldn't.
Yep. All right. So back to offense. Browns is on the clock, and they grab Malachi Corley, who everybody, I think, loved through the draft process, through Senior Bowl, through the Combine, through tape, through analytics. I think everyone kind of had Corley on their list someplace. And then he goes to the Jets, which is a little bit blocked right now, but it feels like there's a role he can play. Again, I see the upside, I see the downside. It's one of those guys where I wish in a different landing spot. I love him, and it's a way too late of a pick, so the talent's there, but at the same time, it's the Jets.
I think he slots in as the 3.
The issue to me is his lack of doing anything football-wise down the field. Like, his average depth of target was less than Bijan Robinson's coming out of Texas. His average yards after catch is 8.5 yards, though. Like, you get this guy the ball, he makes things happen. But the issue becomes also contested catches down the field. He was one of the worst in the country at contested catches. And if you watch his tape, he really does have a hard time tracking. He's not got the best hands when they did play some better teams like Ohio State. Yeah, he scored. He put up a lot of yards, this, that, and the other, but that's because he got fed. But if you actually watched it, he had a lot of balls knocked out of his hands by some of these longer, more physical corners that stayed up on him.
Well, so
he's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
He's a project. He's definitely a guy I'm rooting for. I definitely like the guy. It's just I don't see him being a big time contributor outside of more dink and dunk plays early on.
They need a tight end type guy, right? Like, they don't have one, so he's going to play the slot probably. Just treat him like a tight end, a really fast tight end.
Yeah, he can definitely have a role. It's just he's just a very interesting guy.
Large range of outcome, I'd say. But speaking of that, so I don't think we did a too early, mock draft where he was at this point, but there were probably some too early mock drafts that had Troy Franklin going at the 104. Here he is going at the 204 to the Pats. I tell you what, I know everybody hates everything that happened to him in the draft process, but at some point a player falls down so far he becomes a value, and maybe this is the point, maybe it's not, I don't know, but I like the pick.
I think Troy Franklin is a great pick here.
Yeah, really good gamble.
Yeah.
I love some Robbie Anderson, so I'll tell you that, especially in best ball.
And that actually feels like a great comp for him. And but to your point, Robbie Anderson had a 1,000-yard season, so those guys aren't worthless.
Yeah, he's definitely got value, but he's going to Marquez Valdez you too. Last year owning Marquez. Oh my goodness! Here we go, game-changing play. He could win it for him here. Oh, he dropped it. You're gonna have a lot of that in Troy.
Let's see what happens. I mean, I feel like you got Sutton there, right? They don't throw the ball to Mims, so they got to throw it to somebody else. Maybe it'll be him.
Yeah.
This is going to be so interesting because there are enough skill positions now because between Mims and the pieces last year and the guys who they took this year that there's a lot of quote Sean Payton's guys on this offense. So let's see if ties start getting broken that way or if everyone kind of overreacted to stuff. We'll see, but nonetheless, Bo Nix and Troy Franklin did pretty well together last year. So if nothing else, there's that familiarity there. So that's definitely a positive. Um, this is well done by Lions. He needs a running back and grabs Vidal here. He's probably a by end of year value where he might need something a little bit more on the sooner side, but just another good chip in the pile.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about his situation other than working his way up the depth chart, but everything I read says he has the ability to do it, or the opportunity at least.
It's just one of those ones where it's like it's the Lions. Like we said earlier about his first pick, he hit maybe a single or a double. I would have liked to have seen him just continue hitting singles and doubles because this is a team that has some really good players, especially some offensive players in positions that are hard to replace. If he just kept hitting singles and doubles with his picks and then spent future draft capital to fill in these kinds of spots, I think he would have been a much more formidable opponent in the NFC.
Yeah, I think this is you're right. It's a potential triple, but it's got to get past the first baseman to go down the line to get you to be the triple. So it's a bit of a risk there, but I think there's some good upside there when the only stuff blocking you from a full-time role is J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. But that said, Gus Edwards has had a job in this year in this league for as long as he has because he just produces. It's boring. It's, simple. It's dirty, but it's points.
You're forgetting about the RB1.
Who, JK?
Spiller,
yeah.
bro.
Oh, yeah.
The forgotten RB1.
So I'm sorry, I actually did forget about Isaiah Spiller there. So that was not a gimmick. That actually was me forgetting about Isaiah Spiller. So that's also fair.
Yeah.
All right. Chargers taking. I'll tell you what, the biggest personality in the draft, Javon Baker, making people in wheelchairs stand up. I've heard some post-draft podcasts that are saying, who would you rather have at the same pick, Polk or Baker? Now, I get all the reasons for both sides, but that's the personality and that's the hype around this guy. So, again, for a guy like Chargers who are taking swings right now, makes sense.
Yeah, I like it. That's the type of personality you want in your wide receiver. I think they could take on the world. So I love it.
It's the end of the receivers that are relevant. So
yeah. I do feel like it was a little bit early, but he's the best of that group. Yeah.
Well, again, I think there's still a good number that are pretty interesting, but what we're going to really see ourselves getting into here is really where people have those tiers intermixed upon each other. So I'm the next two picks of the 207 and 208 here, and I'll go through that. But I'm just looking at running backs in general, running back profiles and running backs on the board and what would normally go in this range. And I think guys like Isaac Garando and Will Shipley are exactly what you'd be targeting. The guys who were early day three, really good physical profiles in really good offenses with not necessarily clear path, but reasonable paths towards touches. And I think that's kind of what San Francisco did this year in the draft. It's Pearsall is, If anyone noticed San Francisco last year, Samuel only played like 12 games. Ayuk only played like 13 games. McCaffrey maybe played like 12 or 13. Like these guys get banged up, so there's going to be starting opportunities for these guys running through. So that's why Pearsall is so valuable immediately in a league like ours. And that same logic is why Garando was so valuable to me in this kind of situation, because it's same kind of prospect profile, same kind of prospect thesis as Jalen Wright, but in actually Kyle Shanahan's offense instead of a Kyle Shanahan's disciples offense. So that was my Garando pick. And then Will Shipley. Quick aside on this, Eric in this league, the Bills, runs a UEFA league that I know a lot of us are in. That the gimmick there is you have a taxi squad, but to fill the taxi squad, you have to take a player coming in out of high school. So they can't have played a season in college yet, just like you're signing them in high school in, soccer and how they develop players. So you get a lot of players who it's the, DJ Ugalili or the Spencer Rattlers or those guys who are really into the W scene, getting, people back in their freshman and sophomore year. The reason I bring that up is one of the guys I had on my team there was Will Shipley. So I've been a fan of his and a fan of his profile for years. Clemson hasn't been a sexy program the last couple of years, but he's been putting up 1,000-yard seasons on 200 or fewer touches, averaging very nice yards per touch, and he's going into a Philadelphia offense that really likes that profile. So
And you'll never see the field.
Again, Saquon is in front of him clearly, but like Saquon hasn't missed time.
No, I understand what you're saying. I feel like he's going to have the Boston Scott thing where everybody wants him every year because they think he's got a role, and then he never plays.
I mean, some of those players you just want for the security.
Oh, for sure. It's just, like I said, he's never going to see the field when Barkley's there. They paid him too much money to take him off the field.
If Barkley's on the field.
Yeah. I can tell you I was interested in finding my way into like the 2.8 to 2.10 range and quickly lost interest when Shipley was drafted.
I definitely like it because he's going to be the Gainwell replacement because they have to pay Gainwell this year. So it's going to be, we like this role that Gainwell played for us the last couple of years. Shipley can easily just take over that. And then what else can he do on top of that? And then, if nothing happened to Saquon, it's going to be a minimal role.
So the one thing, he kind of feels like a Philly guy to me, just kind of looking at his time at Clemson. But secondly, if you look at his highlights, he gets caught from behind at like the 5-yard line a ton, which is going to be perfect for the Philly offense because it's like, okay, great, we're inside the 5, tush push.
That's fair.
It's perfect for the offense.
My question, I do have a question though. Garando, how do you feel that he's been around in college long enough that he backed up JT at Wisconsin and he couldn't get on the field in Wisconsin behind Braylon Allen either?
No, that's more than a fair point. And if you look at how he runs the ball, he's very much a Wisconsin runner. He can run it in sort of the zone stretch run scheme and has the physical profile too, if he hits the right crease in that, to take it. But he still looks for contact, and you can tell that he is a Wisconsin runner. So I actually like that more because whereas some of the Jeff Wilsons and Mosterts and others in the past who avoid contact for some of these, he's got that size and that profile to be able to run through some of that contact. So I think it's going to work in his favor.
Oh yeah, 6'2", or not 6'2", but being 220 and running a 4.33. There's not a lot of dudes who do it. I'm just really, I haven't heard anything about it, But they did have 3 different coordinators while he was there at Wisconsin. But it's just like, how does this guy go through 3 different systems and none of these guys utilize him at all? I'm a little dumbfounded by it.
Yeah, and again, with Taylor ahead of him, he wasn't even featured at Louisville. So who knows? It may be a complete swing and a miss, but it's the kind of profile that I feel like some point in the next year or so is going to be interesting, especially as Christian McCaffrey gets a little bit older. That he's going to have a couple of touches in a game. It's going to be like a 3 for 83 and a touchdown type game. At some point in the season, everyone starts wondering, I wonder. And now, because literally no picks have come in the entire time we've been on this, God damn it, Browns.
He's working his big boy job.
So, something I was thinking about earlier, can we just break the stigma about being on the clock and wanting to sit there for a minute for offers to come in? Can we just all cut through the bullshit and just say what we're doing when we're doing it? Because sometimes that's exactly what we're doing, and let's not bullshit about it. It's hey, I know I'm at a position of strength and an inflection point in the draft, so I'm just going to entertain offers for a little bit, and I'm going to take the time because I have it. Like, if people are doing that, let's just say we're doing that.
Wasn't there a whole conversation about this recently, or like within the last season?
We talk about this every draft. Like, don't
trading for the pick and then sitting on it to trade it again.
It was Goose last year. He did it a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't been like, this isn't the pick that Browns traded for, right? This is the pick
he traded for it.
Oh, I thought he already made the selection on the one that he traded for.
I'm pretty sure he traded for it.
I don't know if he traded for it as part of the draft. He had traded for it at some point, but the 203 he had traded for
it was on the clock
and was there for a minute. So
yeah, so he didn't trade into this one and sit on it. But yeah, I agree with Mike. I mean, just tell us what you're really wanting. Like, we know things don't just randomly pop up the second you're on the clock.
And again, I give him full credit for it too.
Yeah.
James, when he came on the clock today at 129, with Quorum sitting there, and he probably got hit with 5 or 6 different offers of people trying to come in there. Could have actually said, pause, I'm going to take a second and kind of sort through these and play some of these against each other and start seeing what I can get out of this conversation. So it's going to be a minute. Instead, he was having lunch. Again, not sure how much lunch was being had during that time and how much was being done, responding to offers, but just kind of saying, hey, I recognize I'm in a spot here that is a point of value, that it makes sense for me to take a minute to talk about and make some deals. So send offers, and I'm thinking about it.
There actually was no BS in that. I was getting lunch, but I was active on my phone. But I wasn't in the mood to type and while I'm eating and everything. Right, I was relaxing. And it was one of those things where it's like I saw a bunch of offers come through. I looked at the offers. I looked at the board, and I probably thought about it for maybe 2 minutes before I just declined the ones I didn't want, took the offer I wanted, and was on my way.
Yep. And again, people have different reactions and different feelings on kind of how their board was unfolding. And at that point, as I was moving into those picks, clearly I had players early on my board that were still there that I was trying to get in for, and others that have moved out and really accumulated quite well in doing so. They got the value they needed for those picks. So, but let's see, should we talk about the trades that are taking place that we may not have covered in detail?
Sure.
All right. Let me get to that.
I think we got 20.
We do.
Wow. We've been making moves.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, it looks
I
like
think it's Bell for Carter. I think that's the first
it's
one.
not been on in 4 hours. All right, transactions, trades. All right, so that would be was the Did we talk about Daxon Hill, or was that afterwards last time?
No, we talked about that one.
So it was a Lorenzo Carter one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hill trade was so jealous that I had to go buy him.
All right. Lorenzo Carter for Ronnie Bell. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guide on that. What were you saying, James?
I just ate I ate a big contract for the Pats. He wanted some cap leverage, and I wanted to move off Ronnie after they went very differently in the draft than I anticipated. So
Yeah, I think Ronnie's got his role, but he's going to have to fight for that spot. Pats and Broncos, Jared Stidham, 111, 112, and 213 to the Broncos for 105, 126, and 417. So as mentioned, Broncos had a 112, 111, 112, and 113 run. This is how he had put that together. I don't know. Was it fun having that stack, Bill? Or looking back on it, was it kind of what you had hoped you were going to get out of it, and sort of shopping one of the picks and taking some of the other two, or those discussions, or how do you feel that all went?
Everything felt wonderful until Bo Nix went off the board, and then I was like, "Fuck," because I traded 5. I knew I was trading the rights to May or whoever was there. For Bo Nix, and then he didn't go, and I was just like, "Oh my fucking god, what do I do?" So, so I had to pivot and do a lot of things, but like that stack would have been great. I would have been very happy. I never would have traded down if he had still been there.
For sure. Then we had a taxi theft. Ravens, Panthers taking Jalen Jones from Ravens. As mentioned, there was a on the clock trade for Colts to give up the 108 to Bears. Nolan Smith, 108, the 323, and the 334 for Bryce Young. So very early quarterback last year, getting swapped for a pick that was taken on a quarterback this year, and a couple more pieces. So Bears continues to try and build things out and add assets, and Colts consolidates further. Okay, we'll keep moving then.
Just a deal.
As mentioned, Seahawks, after it takes May, trades him to Pats for the 110 and the 126. Basically, a 4-slot move down from the 106 to the 110, and picking up the 126 in the process. For how Seahawks has approached the draft, not a bad way of doing it. And May is one of those quarterbacks to build around from this draft, as we talked about before.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah, this was solid.
All right, so Stidham, Julian Hill, Jack Stoll, Tonga, Anthony Johnson, 113 for Brian Branch, Monty Hooker, Ifudu Melifonwu, the 115 and the 214.
We can move on if you want.
That's just a great trade for you. I'm just going to leave it at that. The next one is just so spicy, and I love it, and it's changing my mind on so many things and reinforces so many of my values in the offseason. So for all of us who have had A.J. Brown at some point this offseason, we've probably been valuing him in that 103 to 105 range. And to literally see him get traded for the 105 from this draft is some form of validation to me of that's what I had him valued at, and that's exactly what he just got traded for in this league. Rome Odunze for A.J. Brown. It fits both teams. Pats picks up points, which is what he needs to do. Cardinals picks up a stack of Odunze and Caleb. And like I said, his team is going to be a lot of fun to see how it goes together. I just want these guys to hang on to these foundational pieces. I think their teams could be a lot of fun to see really grow out of this draft.
Yeah, this is a lot of value for Rome right off the bat. Like, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I get your point, but it just feels like this is a lot of value to give Rome right off the bat.
Rome's like the 13th and 13th, 14th in like dynasty rankings, roughly. And sure, like AJ Brown's like 6th, but he's also like a really expensive 6th. So makes sense.
You also have the Cardinals owning Caleb, so you get the stack.
Yep.
But to the broader point of Rome is the third receiver off the board this year. He's the third receiver in his offense right now, probably. Again, depending on how you rank in the 3 piece. And somehow he's worth more than a perennial top 10 receiver over the last 3 years. Like,
Right.
holy shit. Like, we're either really right about this class or we're really fucking wrong.
Definitely wrong.
Definitely.
Yeah, when they've inflated to that price, I think we're wrong.
Like, if this was
Roger
Marvin,
says, but we're wrong. Gotcha.
yeah, like if this was Marvin for AJ, that makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
No,
Well-
but no one's going to give that to you. No one's giving you Marvin for AJ at this point.
No,
Yeah.
I understand. We're just talking about like off of hype alone. Like,
Yeah.
is it really there with Rome? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, Marvin did not do any public testing in this draft process. We have no information about what he actually came out as. And right now, there's 2 or 3 receivers you would trade for him straight up, but based off of the contract values in our league, maybe he's receiver 1 already and he hasn't played it down.
Well, I definitely believe in our league we have guys that should not be traded. We just happen to have a lot of guys who like to trade.
Right.
But again, that's what's just going to be interesting about how these next couple of months come together. Of some of these landing spots are really interesting, but how do these guys pick up the offense? How do they do in camp? This is going to get fluid in a hurry. All right, moving on. Bill moving down from the 115. And I mentioned this earlier to James, but I feel like this is probably true of a couple of teams in this draft. We need to kind of pick an asset and actually do the flow chart Texan style back. And what did they turn that into? And I feel like Bill has turned the 115 into a very large library of things, or is trying to over time. But again, there's a couple of those teams in here where it's you started with this, and again, James being the other with his pieces, and at the end of this, I'm going to end up with 9 guys, and it's the 9 guys of say like the RG3 trade or stuff like that. That maybe it's the Jared Goff trade. You guys remember what I'm talking about?
You mean like if I took 101, turned it into 110 and studs, and then took 110, turned it into studs and 129, and then took 129, turned it into other studs? Yeah.
Something like that, exactly. All right. Speaking of turning studs into studs, you guys have been dancing around and towards each other for the last, I feel like, month around this deal, and I'm very glad to see it finally got done. Mariota, Ernest Johnson, Shelby Harris, Derek Nandi, the 129 and the 201 from RJ to James for Hassan Reddick, Devin Lloyd, Daxton Hill, and the 225. So, three defensive starters ready to go for RJ in this deal to move down to the 225. Panthers picks up the 129 and the 201, two very valuable picks as it turns out, and continues to, addition by subtraction.
I was very happy with this deal. I think Panthers is happy with what he got with those picks. But I got a whole bunch of proven guys. And a lot more than those two picks would have gotten me.
Well, at this current point, I've literally got one selection so far. I've got Jared Verse. The rest is unknown yet, so we'll see.
Not a bad pick to make, though.
Nope.
Oh no, I was very happy when he fell. Jared was the guy that I really wanted to come out of this class with. I just didn't see myself being able to have the draft pick to get him, and then just happened to end up having him just fall until it got to the point where it just made too much sense not to do it.
Yep. So this next one, again, it's fun to see some of these deals getting made. For some of these teams, they really hang on to these picks all year so that they can make the deals at this time. And Seahawks is definitely one of those teams. 206 and 222 to move up to the 125 with Chargers. Again, part of the fun with Chargers here is he accumulated a ton of late first, early second value in his trades recently, and really looked like he was going to build from this class. And he's done a really good job of moving down strategically to even add more picks in those ranges to keep building this out. So I think this is really, really fun to see how these teams fill out over the next couple of rounds here. And Chargers with these last two trades of, again, the 125 for Woods 206 and 22, and then the 128 for 202 and 302. He just picks up a few more picks in this range and probably stays within reach of the guys he was targeting anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly feels very Chargers-y this year. He's definitely in the trade down and acquire assets situation this year. That's just one of many.
Yep.
I like it. I like that. I like that deal, but I like the next few deals that you're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
So as soon as Pat's made his deal to move to 128, I thought, okay, Panthers has been signaling the last 10 picks that he's taking Corum. So if Pats is moving up, he's taking Corum. And just for perspective, from my valuation, I'm thinking that where the Jags picked at 114 is fair range to consider Corum. So that's the value I have on this player. So I'm thinking, okay, this is done. I don't have to worry about this. And then of the three backs in that range, had Lloyd higher valued, so he takes Marshawn Lloyd. So it's I have a player I was considering at the 114, available at 129. I got to try something here. So I came up to get Corum because you see it. This is the point of trading up. When you see what you perceive as value drop like that, move it up and getting it. And I'm just a real big fan of Blake Corum and how he landed.
Was that a good surprise for you, Mike, when you actually saw trade accepted?
To be fair, I was looking down and I'm like, what's taking him so long to accept this? This feels like a slam dunk, easy, exactly what he's looking for. Like, what else is he getting in his inbox that he's got to consider instead of just taking this? So I appreciate that you probably got, bombarded by a bunch of stuff, but glad with the turnout there.
It was actually a Chick-fil-A grilled chicken sandwich and some waffle fries.
Hey, I've been working on a Popeyes combo the last couple of days. For some reason, it's cheaper to get that than a bunch of other stuff around here, but that's a conversation for another day. I'll tell you what. I best describe this trade as the racial draft episode of Chappelle Show, where it's like white delegation selects Colin Powell, where it's like, wait, what? That's so ridiculous. That can't be what actually happened here. And that's how I feel about this trade. Like, I have no value on J.K. Dobbins right now.
No, this is the best trade of the entire draft, no matter what else happens.
Yeah, I'm offended by this trade.
Like, Daniel Jones is a starting quarterback in this league. I know everybody hates him right now, but literally, who's taking his job? Drew Lock?
Literally Drew Lock.
I'm going to be honest. I really think it's Drew Lock's job by week 3. Like, Daniel Jones is trash.
But
he has more turnovers than he does touchdowns, and he's getting paid $40 million for it.
But J.K. Dobbins has been hurt more than he's played, and he's been hurt for longer than he's been healthy in this league. And somehow, that level of player on a $17 million contract is worth a current starting quarterback in this league.
So here's going to be the fun part about this, right? Because you have to assume that Washington reached out to Saints about Drew Lock. He got rebuffed probably, but Bears is going to do what he has to do to get Lock, and then he's going to turn around and sell a pair for way more than what he would have ever imagined possible because somebody's going to be a quarterback.
But he already has 3 quarterbacks. That's the problem.
Oh, he'll figure that out.
He's got Fields, he's got Jones, he's got Nick. So he's got to move one of them to open up the spot to get the pair to move it. And Fields is a long-term investment. So
he'll wait until after week 1 when Russ gets benched, trade off Fields.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about it that way. I was thinking he could have the deal in place for both the acquisition of Locke and the moving of Jones, put Nix on the bench for 24 hours, and taxi for 24 hours, then just be done with it.
You know what? I got to say a big shout out and a big thank you to the Jets, because we've been on this podcast for an hour and a half at this point, going through all manner of things. We have not had a single draft pick, and finally we have a trade that has gone down. We don't know the details of it yet, but finally, in what we're trying to do with a draft marathon where we're talking about picks as they happen.
Well, he says not urgent.
Together. He says it's not urgent, so it's probably not for a pick on the clock, but it's activity going down in the league while we're on the podcast, in a podcast that's supposed to run a little bit longer and be a little bit more open so we can talk about this stuff. There's just nothing happening. What can you do? But if nothing else, this is a bit of activity, so hopefully the commissioners are around to be able to process this. So, again, to recap, we are at the 2:09 right now. The Browns are on the clock. Early second round here. It's been a pretty good pace the last couple of days, probably about 15 to 20 picks per day. Now, I expect we'll see some acceleration as things thin out a little bit and, some of the tiers become a lot more blurry, but we'll see. I think at this point, a lot of people are off their boards and we're into the great unknown.
Let's go watch the Knicks Pacers game come down to the wire.
Oh, man. Basketball just could be fun.
It's pretty great, this series.
Jeez.
Are we
Alright.
finishing trades, or are we saving them for next time?
Let's see. What more trades do
They're-
we have? I
they're
clicked
all-
out of that. Sorry. I chased something shiny and
There's a bunch of pick trades, and
That's just a
then
bunch of picks that haven't happened yet for the most part.
I traded for a wide receiver.
Yes, you did.
that's right. All right. So again, Browns had moved up the 208 and the 318 with Panthers to take the 203 down to the 208, picking up again that mid third in the process. Browns trading on the clock at 252 and then getting sucked into some stuff for work. Happens to the best of us. Bears picking up Quez Watkins for free from the Chiefs. The Raiders one was an interesting one. Raiders second next year and 533, which is the first of the comp picks of the fifth round this year for 306, 406, and 506. So it seems like all offseason Seahawks has wanted a first for the 206. So in this case, he settled for a second for the 306 and then everything that came with it here.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's interesting about that is just trading for the 306 this ahead of time. Being a team like the Raiders, that's a pretty sizable asset for him to be moving up to that spot. He's got to either have a lot of guys he likes, or he's got a sleeper he's just thinking will be there.
Yep. All right. So this next one is also a Panthers deal, breaking down the 208 with me, 208 to 304, and the 318 to me for the 223, the 226, and the 228. So he gets to jump up the 304 to the 226 and the 318 to the 228 for my 15 spot improvement to 208. At this point, I see so many of these guys as in the same tier that I'm okay waiting, but also the value of these guys are them being complete shots. And if I'm going to take a complete shot on a guy, I'd rather do that at a lower value. And then for these guys, I want to make sure I get the guys I want in the offenses. There's a couple guys still on the board who are probably in the same tier as who I took. But I would prefer the offensive structure and offensive coach of the guys that I took versus those guys who are still on the board. So I probably table talked too much there and probably pissed a few people off, but I've tried to do it as discreetly as possible. So fuck off.
Hey, Mike, you want to skip RJ's trade real quick and read mine and Bill's most recent trade?
Why are we skipping my trade?
Because he'll realize something. I don't think he's realized yet.
Oh, the 3 picks or the 2/3 to turn it into a second in the teens.
Yeah, Mike was a 3-way partner, and I don't think he realized he was in the dance.
I did not. I had no idea. So, yeah, we'll come back to yours in a second here, RJ. So 223, 226, and 228 that I had just moved to Panthers going to Bill for 213 and the 214. So a bit of a consolidation, a move up for a breakdown. I think both sides get what they want to there. But, yeah, everybody's happy.
Yeah, I just don't have the cap years for 3 picks. So I'd rather have the 2 better value picks and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, what does it move back 8 spots and then send 2 thirds for the other second, basically?
Yeah.
It all shakes out. And if it works out as far as years for you, then it's good.
But, yeah, this is where I need the flow chart to see how what stuff you had already flowed into what you broke down the 129 for as it pertained to these 2 picks. You've lost me in the flow here.
These are them. I think that's it for the RJ trade. There was the 201, and then I'll have the 213, 214, and that'll be it.
Yeah. And RJ trading Rasheem Green in the 225 for Darius Slayton, the 414 and the 514. Slayton's an interesting buy. An interesting investment thesis, but at a 1.1, is that actually that's his current contract value? So that's not a bad value to get him at.
Yeah, he's affordable. I know he's disgruntled, but at the very worst, he'll at least start the season as a starter, I'd imagine.
Huh.
Yeah, I
But
would assume he's the 3.
Well, the interesting thing to me is, and
Browns is on the clock, and he's on
Bill
the
should know this.
What's up?
The Steelers are trading for receiver guys. It's been Brandon Ayuk. It's been Cortland Sutton. It's been this guy, that guy, and everybody and their mother. And the most recent one I saw was Darius Slayton is supposedly going to get traded for by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I think it's DK. I think they have to wait till July. I think there's like a trade clause in his current contract. They have to wait. I think it's DK.
Oh.
Well, I don't like it either. I'm just, that's just going to
I kind of hate that for Seattle. Like, why would you? Like, that gives you Lockett and JSN. Like, that's not a very formidable group, especially with losing all the tight end depth they lost.
because
And I've never thought that highly of Fant.
because they probably want to be potentially bad enough to get a quarterback next year after failing to trade up for Penix.
I think their defense is going to be good enough that they aren't going to be that bad. Especially with the I don't think they're going to be that bad. The NFC West is honestly, I think, going to be a lot more competitive than people realize this upcoming season.
Well, at the end of the day, they're either going to roll with Sam next year or they're going to roll with a rookie probably. I don't think they're going to have Geno next year. But that's another time for another conversation. Did Browns make his pick yet?
I don't think so.
He was in line.
Nope,
So yeah, it doesn't look like he's made that yet.
he is still online.
He's telling everybody he wants a lot more. You gotta give me 3 first rounders for this pick. I'm gonna be honest, guys. My favorite thing from this entire draft process has been the
The what?
His fucking audio issues are ridiculous.
That is. That has to be on purpose, right?
He literally muted himself, yeah.
You know, guys, I have a bad feeling about this. I just hope that the one thing, no matter what, that nobody does is
Right. Oh, man.
Jesus Christ. We're all about gimmicks on this podcast, but I didn't think we were to be to this level.
You want to finish your sentence, James?
yeah. I guess I can finish that sentence. Sorry about that. It's got to be the whole pettiness between Browns and Patriots, and the whole CD Lamb trade, and the Browns then trying to leverage his future first for everything, and it's just great. I don't know if you guys saw it in the trade bait, but Browns put
the Rome regrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on, the Patriots updated his to say regretting giving me CD Lamb so cheap or something. It was just great. There's a lot of petty back and forth going on in the trade bait.
Oh boy,
Gotta love it.
Enjoy. Just this is some of the most activity we get in this league, so just enjoy as much of it as we can.
yeah. I was surprised so many people missed out on a quarterback.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Bears has 3 of them now, so I think people feel confident that if at some point, especially when 2026 picks become available, they need to go buy one, there's probably a willing team to go do that.
I will say this: I was surprised that nobody traded up for Penix after Bo went earlier than expected in this draft. That was surprising.
So one of the things that we kind of brought up in a different context, but I think is applicable here, is the Dolphins have, 61 2025 picks right now?
50. But yeah.
51 2021 picks. That's 200 contract years, less probably because some of those are probably fifth-round picks. Nonetheless, there's some consolidation that's going to have to happen at some point for him. It's not there yet, but 30% of the market for future picks is gone. So the trading down and try and pick up future picks is a lot harder this year than it would be in other kind of trades. So I think this year we just had to get creative in how to value some of this stuff.
Hashtag give us 2 years out pre-draft, not post-draft.
Ew.
I know. That would be so terrible.
It'd be really damaging for people like the Colts who I have to constantly tell them, stop, don't do it. Rory, don't do it, Rory.
And I mean, that's the other thing too, is if someone does go full dumbass on their team and go all in with 2 years in the future's worth of picks and say F it, even if you're letting the guy free roll for 2 years, if somebody craters their team and has nothing in, that's a really hard orphan to fill. Now, I feel like we attract a certain level of degenerate that maybe it could be a little bit easier, but that's not exactly an easy thing to do.
Yeah, because look how long it takes to fix some of these teams. Since I joined, the Lions and Saints were nothing, and it's been 3 full off seasons. I kind of came in at the end of one, but it's been 3, and those teams are just now kind of turning a corner. Maybe the Saints did it all in 15 hours, but I don't think that's always replicable.
It is not easy to do.
Yeah.
But they also intentionally chose the slow burn. That doesn't have to be the way you do it.
Well, part of that too comes into what did you inherit though? Because I'm pretty sure that Lions roster when he inherited it had nothing essentially. If you have nothing, what can you really trade with?
And I feel like there's a couple teams that took that approach, and I gave them credit for it. Again, I apologize in advance to Bucks for doing them like this, but when I think the current Bucks owner came in, the team was not exactly in the best shape, and he was throwing some one-sided trades, and it's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, look, I've got to swing for what I feel are some lopsided trades in this to try and put some talent on this team. So again, I apologize if I piss you off in this, but this is what I feel like I've got to do to try and put this thing back together. And it worked. But it's one of those things that, hey, let's be transparent with each other of what we're trying to do here. I know there's some stuff where that isn't always in everyone's best interest, but, if everyone just kind of says, I think we're enough adults in the room here to say, okay, hey, if I'm offering you 25 picks for, a pick you want to make, tell me piss off. I'm not trading this pick. All right, I'll stop bugging you. I think we're all okay at taking feedback here.
Yeah. Well, I think the other big thing, though, is just the worst team in the league right now isn't horrible.
Yeah,
not to the way I feel like it's been in the past.
RG's going from worst to competitor just like he always does. Every other year, we're back and forth.
Well, I don't necessarily
for all 3 of our teams 3 times this offseason.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I don't necessarily mean win-loss record. I just mean total assets. I don't think there's a single organization franchise that's just completely depleted, no hope. and they're just like bad, and they have to hit on picks to just build something because they have nothing, or they don't have such an abundance of picks that it's like, it's like the Dolphins. You look at his roster, it's not good. Then you go look at his picks, and you're like, I don't give a crap what he's got on his roster. He's got so many picks, he can go buy a team.
Yeah.
I just don't feel there's any team out there that just looks hopeless.
I'll tell you
Essentially,
what would be really fun. How many of those picks would he have to give that weren't first rounders to the Bears for their first next year? That could be a really fun trade.
So I get what you're saying with
Could
the
that be 22nd or third round picks?
That's funny.
Because I've made those offers before, and it's truly I'm paying my 99-cent bill with 9 dimes, a nickel, and 4 pennies. I am squeezing the shit out of this piggy bank, and that's how I'm paying this. But sometimes it's that's an interesting way to kind of put a team together right now, especially considering the values we're seeing at those picks.
That's true. All right.
we had a pick made.
Nope. He logged off 5 minutes ago.
Oh,
yeah. So he's farming his offers. It's okay.
I even made him an offer to try and get him back online.
That's okay. What else do we have to do for the rest of the offseason?
I guess
sure.
I
Well,
gotta make some trades.
yeah,
I only have 2 more picks. Let's start talking about everybody's favorite sleepers.
Well,
So I can ruin everybody else's drafts.
That's the thing here too. Is I feel like so much of this is we all probably have the same valuations within positional tiers. I'd say there's probably some variability, but from a tier to tier perspective, I don't think there's probably a huge differentiation. But then how positional tiers line up in this draft, as well as with the shift to true position, is just making this nuts.
there aren't like the certain skill level of players. Like nobody's like, oh yeah, I just don't see it. Like they're all good. It's just like how good do you perceive them to be? But there aren't any. I don't see there being a lot of players where you have like a lot of polarizing opinions.
Yeah. Well, we're in that really weird spot now where it's like, do you go after the safer defensive players, or are we swinging for the fences and taking some of these guys who might not have clear paths to playing time this year and might not even be on the team next year kind of guys?
Yeah.
Because again, those might be swings worth taking.
Oh yeah, you never know. I'm on like the list of guys who got drafted in the fourth round and later of receivers would make you think that one of the guys left on the board is going to do something. It's just which one do you think it is, and where does he get drafted?
So what I kind of also hope happens here too, and we still have the feed going here because tis the season for this. We've got 8 to 10 teams online right now, and people have been posting on the trade bait. Hey, here's the valuations I have on guys. Well, for the most part, those picks that you were valuing those guys on are gone. So we're back to the barter system here. So let's take an opportunity here. Take a look at your trade bait. Take a look at kind of what teams were hoping for and kind of what fell to them in the draft. It was kind of okay, maybe these guys won't need a running back because they've got these couple of later picks and they spend them on receiver. So is that a need that they need satisfied now? Or, have teams' priorities shifted? Let's get creative here and, start making the most of these are the values that these guys got taken at, and this is what's still available. So let's get involved and make the teams we want to make.
Yeah.
Because some of this stuff, it's like, and again, I don't want to pick on teams. It's not my intent here. I'm just looking at it because this is one of the times that he is more available and more active in there. But Jags trade bait, for example, I think just says 2025 on it, or 2025 picks. But a lot of these guys are, I'd say, fringe roster pieces. Like, it's probably going to take a more aggressive sales campaign to move some of this stuff, or a little bit more of creative approach to it, instead of kind of letting the business come to you as some of these trade baits have been set up to do. So, hoping to see a little bit of that activity of, all right, now that things are coming together, some of these guys are kind of fringe roster, some of these guys are things I want to build around, and maybe I want to get a little bit more creative on how I go address this need now that it's not available where I thought it was going to be. Like, this is the time to get active and get into it, because people are paying attention. It's the rookie draft. You're going to see 6 to 8 people online at any given time of the day, probably even overnight, probably 3 or 4 a.m. We're going to have 2 or 3 people on. So, if you're looking to get something done with your team, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, like definitely another good example is the Lions has 5 picks between now and 321. That will get him entirely up to 40. So maybe he wants to shed a few more, so maybe he can use some of these 4th, 5th round darts, or he's got a lot of future picks too, and he's a team that could contend. Maybe he goes and tries to trade for that piece or two he still needs. Or maybe he tries to move up into this situation to try to address something else he needs.
And I think we've also seen a good bit of consolidation on a couple teams of, hey, I'm going to just load up at this piece and not worry too much about it until after the draft. I'll let things start sorting themselves out, see if those things start actually sorting themselves out of where those pieces go and to who, and what are they valued at, especially in the pre-camp world here. So let's take another look at the site here and see if Browns is on. Does not look like it. Commissioner does not appear to be on as well, so does not appear we're going to get that trade processed. So
They were in 26 minutes ago. When did this trade happen?
that was the Jets trade that got announced a little bit earlier. So where's the 9:51 is when that one happened. So about a half an hour ago. So again, I've made my pitch to the commissions to allow for a trade czar. I don't want to be annoying about it, but this is a good opportunity where the trade clearly does not involve me. I'm around where it's happening. You guys have better things to do with your time, and we can keep the league flowing in a productive manner. So don't want to be annoying about it, but here's a good example. I feel like I'm just going through all the things that grind my gears. So any other thoughts, or do we need to switch to offline mode, or since literally nothing's happening, like I don't want to force this, but this, we're kind of in a weird spot here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys have picks coming up that you want to get rid of? Do you want to try to let people know what you want for them or something? I don't know. Other than that, yeah, we go offline, talk about other things, trades.
Yep. All right, I think we'll shift to that then. 2 hours, so not our longest, but we're doing what we can in the environment we're given us. As a result, we'll probably be back online later in the week as we get through the second and third round into some of the supplementals and what that ends up looking like, and see what really happens in some of the team building trades that we expect. So appreciate everyone for joining, and we'll keep going offline here to make some deals happen because we think that could be some fun stuff too here. But again, enjoy. This is something that just happens once a year, and there's a reason we get so excited for it. So take care, and hope your picks go the way you want them to.